Hey guys, it's Kevin, my review for the first finale, I guess we can call it that, of American Horror Story Double Feature. This is the end of the Red Tide half of the season, episode 6, Winter Kills, and I was honestly really excited for this episode. You guys know episode 5 is one of the best episodes I think American Horror Story has ever done. I've really been loving this season a lot. I think they have kept things pretty simplistic, but they've also kept it pretty serious, and as a result, it's actually made for a very effective season in terms of scares, but also in terms of emotions. I just think this season has been really successful in what it's been trying to accomplish, and so I really was just hoping with this finale that it could be something really satisfying. I didn't really know where it was going to go, but I was really hoping we would end things on the best note possible. Like I said, I think the season has been largely successful in keeping things, much more, in a much more, I would say, serious manner. They haven't gone too over the top. They have yet to go off the rails. It's overall been a very successful season. Until this episode. I'm sorry to say, this finale was very disappointing to me. I really was not a fan of the way they wrapped up Red Tide very much here at all. It really did kind of feel like they had all of these ideas that they wanted to throw in at the last second, and they just had no possible way to wrap it up in a satisfying manner. And to be honest, it kind of felt like a completely different season altogether, but I just want to get into it right now. So I guess we'll just talk about everything that goes down in the main events of this episode, which it's really kind of hard to talk about everything that goes down because this is one of those episodes where there's so much happening and it's so quick that you're honestly just very confused as to where it's really all going. Right from the moment we saw Harry and Alma, I just felt something was off here. You know, we get this whole thing where Harry doesn't want Alma to take the pills anymore. He wants to keep their family together. He feels that it's doing them more harm than good at this point, which is fine. That is in line with his character where, you know, we can see that now that he's gotten the success that he's needed, he doesn't really feel like he needs this anymore, especially with this, everything that he's been writing and things like that. But you see that both Alma and Ursula are really not for this at all. Alma's calling him selfish and that they don't really need to stop and that he's being very cowardly in that way. And we get that scene, that we've gotten the whole season that we've seen in like every single trailer where Ursula's like, once you sell your soul, it's gone. And I thought what this was really hinting at is that Harry would be on this path where, he's ready to finally give up these pills, but he's too consumed by his working that he can't do that. That's not really where they go with Harry in this episode. To be honest, Harry kind of felt like a different character to me in this episode, and this tends to happen sometimes in Ryan Murphy shows where, basically we'll have a character that starts off really strong, they start off in a very promising way, and then there's like they just like immediately ditch certain elements of their character. It's very strange whenever it happens, and that's exactly what happened with Harry here, especially the fact that now he does seem to care about Doris. He literally told her in the last episode that like he didn't really care all that much about her and that he's outgrown her and that she wasn't of any use to him anymore, and now here he's like concerned about her and he wants to go out like searching for her and maybe to bring her back, and it just didn't really fit in line with what we got last week when he was talking to Alma and, telling her like, hey, I hope your mother's doing okay. I thought they were going to hint at the fact that we were going to see her again, but I'll just say right now, we don't even see her again. The last we saw of Doris was in episode 5, and I just don't understand why. Some people have speculated that Lily Rabe might have had some COVID complications, whether she contracted COVID or if she just couldn't come back onto the set because of other things that were going on in her life. If she had limited amount of time, I'm not entirely sure. But it was just really strange to wrap up a season that's centered around this family with Lily Rabe playing a major role and just not having her at all in this final episode. That was very strange to me, and I think that was a sign that this was not going to be a very satisfying end with what we ended up getting. I have to say, as much as I didn't like the stuff they did with Harry here, the thing that immediately made me recognize that, like, this was not going to be a very good finale at all was when we start off this episode with mostly unknown characters. We see these two fishermen, they find Chief Burleson's body, and I'm like, why are we going back to this? Like, this is something that happened all the way back in episode 3. If we were going to, you know, if we were going to follow up on this, we should have followed it up in episode 4 or episode 5. This was really the first episode to me where it felt like maybe 6 episodes was not enough. Maybe there was a lot more they needed to do with this season, and we're never going to get to see them do it because they only had 6 episodes, really. So this was, again, the whole season I've been like, no, they've been able to pace this well enough to where it doesn't feel rushed, to where it feels like things are, you know, nicely connected, but here it just felt very jumbled. You know, when you have this scene with Dot Marie Jones' character, what was the point of her, where she's going off about how, like, oh, I'm gonna find who did this, I'm gonna track them down, and everyone else is sort of like against her doing so. And also, it's like a black comedy now. There's like a lot of lines here that just were not working for me at all. We don't see her after that. We don't see her at all after that scene. I would assume it's because Holden killed her. At least it certainly seems that way, because the next time we see Holden, he's meeting with, like, the chemists and Austin and Belle. So again, I just don't know what the point of that scene was. Like, we don't go back to it. It's not something that we've really focused on much at all in this episode, aside from when they, like, burst in at the end, but, like, they don't really do much with this at all. So it was just very awkward to me the way that was written. And then we get this thing with Holden where he basically makes this deal with the chemists Austin and Belle, where he is now fully aware of what's going on. He knows about the Pale people, and that the writers are blaming, you know, people in Hollywood and things like that. But the chemist is, like, reminding them that she wants to get rid of this family. She's not backing down. She knows that this has gone too far. This was supposed to be something that was only distributed amongst certain people, and she's just not really here for the wide distribution of everything. And what really bothered me about the chemist in this episode is that, and I already kind of hinted at this in episode 4, the chemist doesn't feel like a character to me. She doesn't. She's there to be a red herring of sorts. She's there to be someone that's there to spout exposition and basically talk about, you know, how this is not, you know, talk about the dangers of what them getting themselves into. And in this episode, they kind of made her like the voice of reason of sorts, but I actually don't think that was a very good choice, because I don't really feel like the chemist is in any way a hero here, but this episode kind of makes it seem like we're supposed to be on her side. We're supposed to be wanting the chemist to kill this family. We want the chemist to, like, do all of this crazy shit, and I just didn't understand why. Like, I get it, obviously, yeah, Alma we need to get rid of. Like, Alma's a problem, Ursula's a problem, and Harry's a problem as well, but, like, I just don't fully understand why we're supposed to be siding with the chemist here. Why do we want all these people to die? It just didn't really make sense, because I feel like Austin and Belle are also a big problem, you know, with the way they're going about things. So I just, again, I didn't understand what they were trying to get at here, but Belle does end up kidnapping Eli, and she basically threatens the baby's safety. And the one thing that really did surprise me is Alma suddenly caring about Eli. I mean, she literally was willing to, like, eat him in the last episode, and here suddenly she, like, cares about him. It just felt very out of character to what we've seen with Alma from this point forward, so I didn't really understand that at all. And then before we get to that confrontation that goes down, we get this really weird scene with Ursula where suddenly she's, like, directly putting herself in harm's way from the Pale people, but they're for some reason, like, not wanting to go after her, even though that completely contradicts what we've seen all season, where the Pale people eat those that are not infected, that eat those that have not taken the pills. That's who they feast on. Why suddenly are they not wanting to do that? Why suddenly are they why is Ursula the one that they're, like, resisting to the urge to do that? It didn't make any sense here. She tells them that there's, like, this cure that they can take, and We don't go back to that at all with this cure that's been developed. I don't even know if it was true. I don't know if Ursula was just trying to, like, get them to, you know, calm down. I didn't understand what was going on here, but we do eventually get to this confrontation, and like everything else, it was very disappointing the way this played out. I liked the way it started out with Austin and Belle basically, you know, cornering these three and telling them that, like, you know, there's no way out of this. We got to start cleaning up this town. You know, we got to go after everyone that's, like, completely abused this drug and things like that, and that they've tried to be very welcoming, but they know that the situation has gotten very out of hand. And I was like, I was honestly all here for them just killing this family, except for Harry. I did not want Harry to die. Like I said, I wanted Harry to die through Doris. I thought that would have been the most satisfying way for him to go out. So I was honestly ready for them to just gut into, like, Alma and Ursula and basically have Harry be the one that needs to, like, sacrifice them. You know, because I would have thought they were going to keep, like, Harry on their side. This is the one that they exposed the drug to. They were going to try to get him to, like, choose between, like, his baby or his family. I think that would have been a really effective moment, but they didn't choose to do that, like, where it's like you have to choose between the baby, your family, or the success that you're having with the pill, but they didn't do anything like that. Instead, right as they're about to kill, all of these pale people just come out of nowhere and just completely devour Austin and Belle. Just a really weird turn of events, the way that all played out. Ursula comes in and, like, begins shooting at them as well. I just really did not like the way this played out at all. I thought it was deeply unsatisfying. Austin and Belle as characters feel kind of pointless overall. It feels like we had this whole build-up between the two, and we don't even get to see it play out. It very much reminded me of Apocalypse when we were building up to this fight between Mallory and Michael Langdon, and it was literally just her running him over with a car. That's very similar to this, where it's like, you know, we have this really interesting setup where you have the chemist and, like, her side going after the Gardner family, and you think that there's going to be some sort of fight that goes down there, but nothing of the sort occurs, and instead they're just devoured, and they're able to get off scot-free, right? Well, not quite, because Alma, I guess, is calling the shots here. She randomly decides to just, like, gnaw into Harry, which I guess makes sense, because he's, like, the one thing that's, like, stopping her from really achieving, like, her true greatness. She feels like he's getting in the way of that. So she just, like, gnaws into him. But again, this doesn't make sense with what we've seen with Alma's character moving forward. Alma's character worships anyone that is talented, and anyone that's untalented she wants to get of completely. So I just didn't understand why she was acting this way. It just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I would have much rather had it where Harry had to realize he needed to put her down. I think that would have been a much more emotional ending. I think it would have fit more in line with this season, but here, I just don't think it really worked. And again, I get it. Alma's supposed to be, like, the big bad. Alma's supposed to get her way and things like that, but I just don't think this was a satisfying end for Harry. I think this absolutely should have been Doris. That was the one that, you know, killed him. I think if he was going to die, it should have been Doris. If he wasn't going to die, absolutely Alma should have died. But he does die, and on Alma's hands, I just didn't really understand it. And then the chemist apparently is, like, struck up some kind of deal with Ursula and Alma, so I guess that's what they went to see the chemist for last week. That's the deal that they made. Harry's out of the picture, so now they can just, like, go on with their lives and gain success. But again, it's not very satisfying, and again, I don't understand why we're supposed to be siding with the chemist here. Why are we on her side? I mean, she's still doing some really fucked up shit, and I just don't really understand, again, any of what this episode is trying to do, writing-wise. And again, maybe I'm you know, misinterpreting it, but it definitely seemed to me like we were supposed to be siding with the chemist, and the chemist was supposed to be, like, the voice of reason here, but it just didn't really work out for me. So the thing that really does suck, though, is that we still have, like, 12 minutes of this episode left, and it goes even further off the rails, because basically they all concoct this story as to where Harry's gonna take the blame for all the deaths, so now they can just chill in LA, and everything we got in LA, again, to me, felt like it could have been its own episode. Like, we could have had an entire episode just focused on what these characters end up accomplishing, you know, after they've, after they've achieved greatness. What do they do to attain, you know, success and things like that? What was their initial plan all along? You know, we kind of do get to see that here, but it's done in a very rushed manner where I guess now the chemist has made it so the Pale are getting rid of, like, terrible people. They are, this one guy who's a Pale person who used to be, like, this police officer. He attacks this tourist, like, out of nowhere, and his colleagues just, like, come out of nowhere to gun him down. So they're trying to make it so, like, they only give this to bad people, and they're gonna become Pale people, but that's flawed logic because we don't know that all bad people are untalented. So again, it just didn't really make sense. And then we get this whole news segment where they're trying to like sort of force in like police brutality and things like that. And it just felt like such a forced message. Like, I know Ryan Murphy likes to do social commentary, but none of this season has really focused on that at all. So to just have it in here, it just felt really shoehorned in. And I don't think that really worked at all. They talk a little bit about racial complaints and things like that, but Alma turns off the TV before we can even hear too much about it, so I guess it doesn't really matter that much. But basically, they do have this conversation where they're starting to have, like, all these different, like, complaints and things like that, and the chemist talks about, like, the risks are, like, very minimal because of, like, military security concerns, and that she wants to perform some sort of, like, community service now that they've basically gotten everything that they've wanted, but you can see that Ursula has not gotten everything she wanted, and what she essentially wants is actually not a bad idea. It's kind of like a Little Shop of Horrors scenario, where now that this pill is something that, is well known, she wants to distribute it even more. She wants every single writer in Hollywood to get a hold of this pill. She wants to find the next Harry. She is determined to make sure that can happen so she can attain the greatest success possible. And I like what they're trying to say about greed. I think everything with Ursula fits in line with her character. There's nothing with her in this episode. Aside from that one random scene, I think everything they did with her still does make sense overall. I don't think she as a character was ruined here, and I don't mind even what they ended up doing at the end of the episode. But Alma, again, I just don't really like the way this wraps up, where basically she has become successful in the New York Philharmonic. She is interviewed by this guy. This guy, like, really talks down to her and tells her that she isn't really unique in her talent. And I really like this a lot, because if you guys remember, I speculated that Alma was not that great and that she was going to eventually realize that, like, I kind of would have liked the idea if she's just, like, as mediocre. She's not bad. She's not good. She's just kind of mediocre. She's in like a middle ground. I think that would have been a really interesting sort of revelation for her. But no, I mean, she just like tears this guy's throat out. So again, what's even the point of this scene? Just that we're seeing Alma continues to be bad? Like, I just didn't really understand what they were even trying to do here. But like I said, the way that this does end with Ursula exposing this entire college class to the pill, and all of them turn out to be Pale people, and they're just turning on each other, and we see basically LA is in ruins at this point. It's on fire. The chemist literally like drives away with Eli. I don't think that was a bad way to end it. I get that Ursula, her entire mission all along was to see what this can do for writers. You know, it seems like that was what she really wanted to do. She wanted to see if she could find that next Harry, and instead it just throws the entire world into chaos. Again, it was a very Little Shop of Horrors-esque ending, and so I actually like that quite a bit. I like the way they did wrap things up there, but again, it does still feel very rushed. It doesn't feel like a very satisfying ending at all. There's so many things that they could have focused more on in this episode. You know, what happens to, you know, what really happens to Doris? What is she doing? Is she just a Pale person now? You know, she just like, what's going on there? We don't get anything else with her. I would have much rather had some sort of conclusion to Harry's work. What happened to all the offers that he got? That's not discussed anymore. You know, what was the point of all these police officers? What was the point of Austin and Belle as characters? Why was the chemist in on this all along? Why was she willing to settle for this deal when it seemed pretty adamant that she wanted that family out of there? I just don't understand. And why does the chemist suddenly decide to just leave everything behind? Like, again, I don't get it. I don't get any of what they're trying to do. And that's why I said, like, I don't think we should be siding with the chemist here, because she literally just runs away from what she's doing. So really the only character at the end of this that I feel is even somewhat well developed is Ursula. Ursula's character makes sense, but every other character in this that they focused on, I feel like was kind of ruined in this episode. And that's very unfortunate, because I do think they were going down a pretty successful path overall. And like I said, I understand a lot of the character's prior motivations. Like, I get it that Alma is pure evil. She doesn't want anyone to get in her way of achieving greatness. I totally understand that, but I assume that that only extended to people that were not taking, you know, the pill, people that weren't on Muse. I thought that that only applied to people that were untalented in that way. I thought she wanted them out of there, so it was just very weird for her to go in this direction. I thought that Harry was someone that had completely lost his soul already. So when Ursula's talking about, like, once you sell your soul, it's gone, I'm like, I pretty much thought through telling Doris to leave your house, like, that kind of solidified that it already was. So it was just very strange to me. The chemist, I don't know enough about. I don't know what her motivation was. It seemed like she wanted to see, you know, if people were, you know, what would happen if the talent went after the untalented. But, like, I just don't really understand what she was fully trying to achieve. So the whole motivation is just very confusing to me. Like I said, at the end of this episode, Ursula really is the only character that through and through I totally do understand. She wanted to churn out the best writers that she possibly could. She was so desperate to find the next Harry Gardner that she basically manufactured the entire, you know, basically took over all of the managing of the of Muse. She wanted to sell it to everyone. She wanted to make it as widely distributed as possible, and basically causes the entire city of LA to just end up in ruins, and it's entirely her fault, and she doesn't seem too upset about it or anything. So yeah, I mean, that's why that's the only thing that generally did work for me in this episode. But other than that, I really was just very let down by a lot of what ended up happening here. But overall, I just found this to be very lackluster of a finale. I do think there were some good ideas here, but like I said, I mean, tonal-wise especially, this just did not feel the same. It wasn't as dark and serious as the rest of the season has been. It was a lot more campy, a lot sillier. Especially the scene where Austin and Belle are being attacked and you have this, like, music playing. Nothing about that felt like something I was supposed to take seriously, so it was just very strange the way they decided to put that together. A lot of weird editing choices in this episode, and overall, I think the thing that hurts this episode the most is that it's only 37 minutes, and there's only so much you can get done in that small increment of time. So a lot of character motivations just didn't really make sense to me. A lot of the conclusions to these characters just didn't make sense to me. There was a lot of stuff that they could have dived deeper into this episode, but because they didn't, it just ended in a very unsatisfying manner, and that really sucks because I think the season has done a really good job of diving deeper into the idea of talent. Is it something that we're born with? Is it something that consumes us? You know, are we able to deviate away from it? Are we able to be, you know, are we able to start afresh even when we've been completely consumed to success? You know, I think that's an idea that this episode was trying to bring up, but again, it was completely overshadowed by a very rushed pacing, so we never really got to dive into any of those ideas overall. I just think as a whole, this was a very unsatisfying finale. There are a lot of questions here that I'm just really struggling with. What were the point of a lot of these characters? Looking back, I mean, there were just quite a few characters here that I found to be completely pointless. Lily Rabe especially, what the hell happened to her? We saw her in episode 1, and then I think she was in episode 4, and then we haven't really seen her since then. I don't understand what the point of her was. I don't have a problem with Karen not being alive. I talked about this before. I think she definitely had the most satisfying end. But I think as a whole, I just wanted so much more from this finale. I think they've done a really good job in building it up. But unfortunately, Ryan Murphy does what he does best and disappoint us. But I don't even know if he's the one to blame because he wasn't the one writing this episode. Mandy Cotto and Brad Falchuk were, but they literally wrote the last episode. So I don't even know who's to blame here. I think what I really would chalk this up up to is they just did not have the time to tell the last half of the story that they really wanted to, and as a result, we get a very rushed, fragmented mess that honestly feels like something out of a completely different season overall. This was a very disappointing finale, and so I am going to give this episode of American Horror Story Double Feature, Episode 6, Winter Kills, a C-. It was good while it lasted, I suppose. Look, at this point, I don't know what Death Valley is really going to be. I don't know if it's going to connect to this. Maybe we're going to see the chemist. They kind of set up the fact that, like, the chemist is venturing off somewhere else, so maybe we're going to end up seeing her again. I know Angelica Ross is in the next half of the season. I don't know if she's playing the same character. I guess we'll just really have to see the way that all plays out. But other than that, guys, that's really it for my review of this episode of American Horror Story Double Feature. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Were you guys as disappointed by it as I was? I'm not really sure. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.